Stressed and depressed? You're not alone. How can we manage the stress and isolation of sheltering in place? How do we cope with the challenges of working remotely and the anxiety of job uncertainty? How do we manage household relationships when resources, including technology and space, are limited? If you're anxious about finances, working from home, managing the kids, or coping with isolation, you're not alone. Our STEM Café this evening is brought to you by NIU STEAM and Northern Illinois University Center for P20 Engagement. Science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math. I'm Dr. Judy Diamond, organizer of the STEM Cafés for the past 8 years and your host for this evening. STEM Cafés are designed to connect the greater community to the latest research and hot topics at casual gatherings where adults eat, drink, and chat with STEM experts. Tonight, you will need to provide your own favorite snacks, drinks, and carryouts. We usually hold our monthly STEM Cafés in restaurants. Our hearts go out to our restaurant partners. We wish them the best during these times, and we look forward to getting back to the restaurants. A couple of our partner restaurants are offering specials for virtual STEM Café participants. Fatty's Pub and Grill in DeKalb is offering a 10% discount to anyone who mentions that they attended our virtual STEM Café. Open Range Southwest Grill in Sugar Grove has partnered with us for both teen and adult STEM Cafés. They are offering $5 off carry-out orders until May 15, 2020 for anyone who mentions they attended our virtual STEM Café. NIU STEAM is happy to bring you this very important topic this evening. We are all experiencing challenges during this pandemic that we never could have imagined. But these times are also bringing out the best in us. Some of us are finding talents we never knew we had. New recipes, exercising. Families are becoming closer because they are spending more time together. People are making sacrifices and coming together to recognize those that are on the front lines. However, our normal routines are certainly disrupted, which can cause stress. And that is what we are here to talk about this evening. Tonight we bring you 3 NIU experts to lead you in discussion, provide you with coping strategies and solutions, and direct us to resources to help family members and ourselves. Our speakers are Suzanne Deggs White, Chair of the Department of Counseling and Higher Education at Northern Illinois University. She earned her PhD in Counselor Education and Supervision at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. She is also a licensed counselor who has worked in community agencies, medical settings, and in private practice. Her academic research explores transitions and development over the lifespan, with a strong focus on human relationships and social support. She has edited 9 books in the field of professional counseling and has written 4 books on relationships, including friendships and family relationships. A national recognized expert, Dr. Deggs White, is an invited blogger for Psychology Today and a frequent guest on Fox 32 television, WGN, and multiple podcasts and radio programs. She is frequently sought out by popular online and print publications for her expertise, including Time.com, Huffington Post, CNN.com, Cosmopolitan, Vox.com, and Women's Health magazine. Our second speaker, Brian Smith, is our NIU Director of the Employee Assistance Program and Training Center, which offers counseling, consultation, and customized training to staff, faculty, and their family members at NIU. Brian's background includes over 25 years of mental health counseling experiences, serving all age groups with a wide variety of personal, family, and work-related difficulties. His specialties include trauma recovery, anxiety and depression, workplace concerns, family and relationship difficulties, grief, loss, and bereavement, and life transition challenges. Brian is an alum of NIU. He has a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology from NIU and a Master of Social Work from Aurora University. Our third speaker, Sarah Clapper, has been the University Ombudsperson at Northern Illinois University since 2012. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Communication from Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, and she earned her Juris Doctorate from the University of Cincinnati College of Law. Ms. Clapper started her career in a general civil law practice at Southeastern Ohio Legal Services in Portsmouth, Ohio, and focused her career in public interest law, as well as in higher education. Ms. Clapper's role at Northern Illinois University focuses on conflict resolution, prevention, and management with the entire campus community. She works closely with campus partners on personnel matters, leadership development, executive coaching, and policy development. Tonight's format will be similar to our live STEM cafes. Our speakers will speak for an hour, followed by Q&A and discussion. During the talks, you can write your questions. We will end by 8 p.m. We are recording our cafe tonight, and it will be posted on NIU STEAM website. Suzanne, would you like to begin?
Yes, thank you very much. I'd like to start out sharing first that I've never done a web presentation like this before, where I'm speaking kind of into the void, and I usually like to encourage questions and answers and discussion through my presentations. So tonight's my first go at this, but feel free to make notes or comments in the comment box that we can address later on. Secondly, I want to thank Judy and Aline and Roz, the three people who pulled this together and allowed technology to bring this into your homes. Thank you all. And I'm really excited to be here tonight with such an amazing panel of experts in the areas of dealing with stress, dealing with work stress, home stress. And I think you'll get a range of topics now that are going to help you understand yourself a little better, understand relationships a little better, and maybe make your life a little better and make the lives of others with whom you interact better. So tonight when we get started, we're going to be talking about the idea of stressed and depressed, you're not alone. And many of us now, I don't think as many of us have ever thought about the isolation that we've been put into, the quarantine, isolation, stay at home. The whole country has moved into this place where we're having to be very individualistic, and we don't get to, and we realize now just what a collectivist nature humans really have. Although we might like to think that we're self-sufficient and can look out for ourselves, we're realizing that we really are an interconnected group. Excuse me. The first thing I want to talk about, it's important to remind ourselves that we're all experiencing a huge new stressor in the form of a global pandemic that's overnight reshaped the lives of all of us, even for those who have not been diagnosed with the virus, or maybe who you don't know anyone who has the virus personally, but the virus itself, COVID-19, has had a huge effect on our lives, and it's a critical incident that has brought all of us face to face with the crisis, and it's a traumatic incident to have the lives we knew change so drastically overnight. And what I want to reassure everyone is what you're feeling is a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. We all have very different go-to responses in the midst of a crisis, but the important thing to bear in mind is that our crisis reactions are normal reactions for us to abnormal situations. Most of us don't spend our lives living in crisis from day to day, so when we're confronted with trauma, we may be surprised at how we're responding. It can be overwhelming. It can be a lot of different feelings can go through our heads and our bodies when we're faced with something as big as a stay-at-home order might be, or loss of the life we knew, loss of life, can disconnect from our friends. And as a counselor, one thing I've learned that one of the first things most clients want to know is, am I normal? Clients want to share what's going on with them, and we all want to know that what we're feeling, even if it's unusual for us, that it's a normal reaction. And so right now, I laugh about the different feelings. We all are doing a lot of Skyping, we're doing Zooming, we're keeping in touch with people, and it's interesting how many of us are reaching out to say, is it normal to feel so lonely? Is it normal to binge Netflix or Hulu or Hallmark Channel? Is it normal to feel scared? Is it normal to want to pig out in junk foods and do unhealthy things? Is it normal to sleep a lot? Is it normal to feel depressed? Is it normal to hoard toilet paper? Someone said they feel like they've turned into a hoarder. They should be on the television show The Hoarders, and it's a young person in their early 20s. And this fella said he was going to make sure he had enough toilet paper. He'd never have to worry about it again. And so he not stockpiled. He has probably 40 rolls of toilet paper for one person. That's stockpiling in my mind. But the idea that you're doing these things you normally wouldn't do, and it's because you're in a situation that you've never been in before. Please know that it's normal to feel lonely while isolated from support network members or even your colleagues. We might miss work more than we ever thought we would miss work. It's normal to binge television shows, but just don't binge news networks. It's so easy to get sucked into the news, and we can watch the news on special news stations. We may catch the news on major stations, but it's really important that we stay away from the news if the news causes us to worry. Americans, we like information in good chunks, and so sound bites are so often the messages that we receive on news stations, and those sound bites can play in our head longer than we really need them to do. Our love of graphic charts, too, can cause problems, because when we see the numbers or the curves that we want to flatten and they're not yet flattening, or we see the numbers of people who've been diagnosed with the virus or lost their lives to the virus, those kind of numbers kind of stay with us, and those aren't the images that are going to help us feel better and help us move forward. Unless we're able to turn those into motivation to make a difference and to help make a change in the world. But getting hung up on numbers, images, sound bites, that can really play with our mental health, especially if we're having a hard time sleeping, or if we have kids in the house who see bits and pieces and it raises their own fear. A lot of times the images also are in like orange and red, these warning colors, and so they do stand out and they grab everyone's attention. So be really careful about how much news you're watching. It's okay to keep it informed, but just don't get overwhelmed with the news that's out there. Feeling super anxious, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Some anxiety is good. We have to have a little bit of anxiety in our life and a little discomfort to make changes. But when we're being overwhelmed with these negative feelings, irritability, it's normal to be irritable. We're having to spend more time with people we may love than we ever have before, or we may be spending more time alone and feeling that irritability. So a little bit of irritability is normal. A lot is something to be concerned about. And we'll talk more about ways to deal with the feelings that are overwhelming us as we go through the presentation tonight with the different presenters. When we learn how to be a counselor, one of the lessons that is hammered into us is that everything's a process. It's a process. Things don't happen right away. Clients come into my office, I want to be this, I want to do that. And we have to realize that it's not going to happen overnight. We can't wish away or wish change on ourselves. And so we have to be patient with ourselves and realizing that as we try to create our own new normal, it's going to take some time. And also, we're really not sure what our new normal is really going to look like. There's a lot of there's a lot of uncertainty. When will we be allowed to leave the house? New York, I believe today, May 31st, is when they're looking at finally lifting the stay-at-home order. We don't know. We don't know what it's going to look like when it does lift. We don't know if we're going to how social distancing, how mask and personal protective equipment expectations are going to be. And so we can't rush into what's going to happen next, and we can't force ourselves to adapt right away. What we have to do is begin to take some time and begin to think about who we're going to be, how we're going to be, and how the world is going to be when things begin to open up a little bit in the coming weeks. And the thing is, we all love routine, and when we have to give up our routine, it's hard for us. And so we've spent 4 weeks now here in our houses, 3 to 4 weeks, depending on where you are. Some of you have essential jobs and you're still going out. And there's a lot of stress that can come for people who are still going out. People staying home feel stressed, they feel trapped. People going out might feel they're at risk and feel like people don't understand the risk they're putting themselves to. And so realizing that everyone's path is a little bit different from your own, and having a lot of patience with other people and acknowledging the walk that other people are taking as their new normal shifts and is crafted. Okay. And when we think about responding to a crisis, there's some models that say it's a three-phase response system. The first one is react, the second one is reset, and the third one is to reinvent. It's really important that we realize that we don't come out of a crisis the same person that we go in. It can be a period of growth and development that springs from the changes that we undergo as we learn the resources we have, the resources we need to reach out for, and the difference we can make in ourselves and the people around us and our relationships, because a lot of these things have to be reinvented after we all go through a significant life-changing event. The first phase is reaction phase, and the reaction phase occurs when we're first confronted with a traumatic event. Our reactions are usually going to vary widely based on our DNA makeup as well as who we are and the experiences we've had over time. And we can swing between two polar opposite reactions ourselves, as well as see a variety of reactions in close family members. We often don't know how we will react until we are in a crisis situation. We can't plan for crises. If we could plan for them, they'd be planned changes or planned events. So what we see in people is we might swing back and forth, or we might go towards one end of the pendulum. Some of us might go numb in a crisis. Others might be supercharged emotionally. Some of us might lose our appetite. Others of us might eat like there's no tomorrow. Some of us want to have solitude when we're dealing with a crisis and kind of want to tuck ourselves away. And others of us, or other times, we might want to reach out to others and find support among our support networks. Some of us might lose our interest in everyday life. We might just kind of that numbness. And other people might get very hypervigilant. They might not be able to relax. They might stress more because of not knowing what might come next. And once a crisis hits, most of us, I think when the stay-at-home order hit for all of us, we probably did have higher levels of anxiety. We probably worried about things we might not have ever worried about before related to health and safety. And concerns maybe now that we had then start to seem a little silly, or we may have had growing concerns over time as we continue to follow the news. And sometimes we sleep too much. Some of us kind of escape from the world and the stress and sleep too much, or others of us might lay awake unable to sleep and worried about things. So that insomnia may be one of the symptoms or one of the signs that we're going through a crisis. So everybody can be a little bit different. And if you're living in the house with multiple people, you have to bear in mind that everyone's reaction is going to vary. And a lot of it has to do, as I said, with our DNA and with our experience in life. Some of the relationship interreactions that might occur when we are first in that react phase. Relationships can be stressed during crisis periods. Not all of us are going to react the way others want us to react. And stress, when we're stressed, we're not the best person we can be. We're not the best person in relation to others a lot of times. Some of us are amazing. There's some people you probably know, you think, oh, if I'm ever in a crisis, I hope this person's nearby. Others of us might be the kind of person like, oh my goodness, I hope that I'm nowhere near Suzanne when a crisis hits because she's going to fly all to pieces. It varies, and so we have to kind of understand all of the people in our lives are going to respond differently, and to have patience with them and not expect them to be the way we think they should be. That's in any kind of relationship at any time. And we also have to recognize that everyone has their own basic response pattern, and we can help others better handle it by taking an outsider perspective. And what that means is that if you take an outsider perspective, you're not trying to force who you are on that person. You're trying to help that person better handle what's going on. We can help others mitigate and minimize unhelpful and harmful responses by offering empathy, support, and validation. And those are really key in any relationship, the sense of empathy, understanding what that person's feeling, support, being there for that person as a resource, and validating their feelings. Even if the feeling isn't something you're feeling, if you say, yeah, I can hear that you are scared. Yeah, I can understand what you're going through and how this might have happened for you. Using words that communicate your sense of support and your empathy with that person. And as we talk about our own feelings, we're better able to explore ways to handle them and express them. And so being willing to talk about where you're at, what you're feeling, allows your family members to talk safely about what they're feeling. And when we're able to name our feelings and put them out there, that takes some of the power away from them that keeps us from being able to respond effectively. Feelings of overwhelm can also happen in a crisis. And in some situations, when a normal reaction, a little bit of fear, starts to turn into paranoia that's paralyzing you from behaving in the way that's normal to how you behave, there are times when we might want to reach out for professional support and professional help. Loss and grief, we're all probably feeling loss and grief right now, whether we've lost someone to coronavirus or not. There's a sense of loss that the country has suffered. The grief over the way this virus has taken over the country, taken over the way we live our lives. There can be anger, and when we have anger, it can be out there at God, at self, at others. But when there's not really a place to put our anger, some of us can, kind of work through it and move forward. But other times, if it's getting in the way of you and your normal functioning, you might want to reach out and seek support. Resentment, the same thing. Frustration and powerlessness, because there's so little we can do when it comes to something like the pandemic. We can take all the actions in the world, but we still can feel powerless to really stop other people from making choices that may harm us. And so being aware of that and trying to find a way to talk through with friends, or again, reaching out for support. Helplessness and hopelessness, those are serious concerns, and when you're feeling those and it's just not going away and you just can't get back to where you feel you should be, then reaching out for support is really important. And there's so many ways right now to access telemental health services. You don't have to leave the house. You can reach out to to a counselor, and you'll get the same kind of interaction that you get face-to-face, but in this little 2D version instead of the face-to-face. But it can be a wonderful relief to have someone who's there to listen to you and help you make sense of what's going on. The second phase is the reset phase. And this is the time where we're able to take a breath, reflect, and figure out exactly what has happened, why it's happened, how it's affected us and those we care for. It gives us a space to really say, what happened? What's going on? 1 week I was doing this, the next week here I am, and this other whole life almost, it feels like, for many of us. And we need a place where we can try to make sense of all that. And we have to recognize that what we're feeling, what we've experienced, has happened at the individual level, the relational level, our professional level, the community level, and the global level. So these are a lot of ways in which this one event is impacting all of us on so many different levels. And we sometimes don't recognize how strong an impact something's had until we get to this reset phase. We might just be so blown away by the initial reaction that now's the time where we can begin to think about, we reassess the situation, we evaluate things, even if we're still figuring out how to get through the crisis. So this is an important time where we might begin to ask ourselves some questions. How did this event change your self-perception? Are you the person you thought you would be in a crisis? Were you stronger than you thought you might be, or did you need to ask for help and were able to ask for help? What did it show you about your relationships? When you had to isolate, had that changed relationships? Because a lot of relationships have changed because of the stay-at-home order. Unfortunately, domestic violence has gone up in many areas because of the lack of resources and ability to leave the house. So domestic violence hotlines have seen a lot more traffic. There's a lot of just that fraying of nerves that can happen if you're a parent with kids in the house. That's a huge toll it can take if you feel you have to be a teacher, have to be the parent, have to be the disciplinarian, have to be the playground person. It's a lot we're asking of ourselves in relation to others. And so stepping back and saying, how did it change? What did it show me about my relationships? And am I the person I thought I was in relation to whoever that person might be? And lastly, how can you use this event to take action for a better world? because it's really important that we take what we learn from something like this and we look at a way to advocate for ourselves or advocate for others by using the lessons we're learning. Because all of us have probably learned so much about ourselves, and if we don't give ourselves space to think about it and reflect on what's happened, we may miss some really golden opportunities to learn about ourselves and put into action some of the things we've learned. Another important part of the reset phase is making meaning. It's really important when traumatic events happen that we make meaning from this event and we make it part of our story and not just the focus of our story. There's an expression, are you the kind of person when you face a problem that you wring your hands, or do you roll up your sleeves and get to work? And at first, most of us probably do wring our hands a little bit when suddenly the traumas happened, the crisis, the pandemic came, we weren't sure what to do, information wasn't coming that we felt we needed. So we probably did worry, but now are you ready to roll up your sleeves and get to work and start doing what we need to do and what we can do to protect ourselves, protect our family, and protect the well-being of other people across the country? The last phase is the reinvention phase. This is where we reinvent ourselves, our behavior, our responses, and systems as well. We become advocates for ourselves and for others and come together to make the world a safer and better place. We are also driven to enhance our own behavior based on the lessons we have learned about ourselves through this. We want to be more effective in our lives. We've learned some of our shortcomings, and now there are ways to consciously make better choices and begin to practice new behaviors and new attitudes. For instance, attitude matters in learning to practice optimism, and remind yourself of prior successes, and it will help prepare you to better handle negative events. So if you remind yourself when you were able to overcome an obstacle, that's going to help train your brain to look for the positive and to believe in yourself. Control your controllables. You can't control other people. You can't control the government. You can't control illness, virus. So choose to invest your energy in controlling only those things that you alone can control. And when you choose to do that, it really builds your confidence and builds resilience, because I'm making choices, I'm controlling the things that I alone can control. And that gives me a sense of autonomy too, which is really important. A lot of times when we face a trauma, we may feel as if we're a victim, but when we begin to control what we can, that gives us that sense of autonomy again, which is really key to a healthier mindset. Making healthy choices. Eat healthy, stay hydrated, give meditation and mindfulness a try, and get exercise. You know, when we're growing up, our parents tell us to eat right, get plenty of sleep, all those things, and science has proven now that following those expectations really do help our mental health. They help our psychological resilience, they help decrease anxiety, they help decrease depression. That these things that we're told to do, eating veggies, make sure you're eating the healthy diet, because it really does play a strong role in your mental well-being as well as your physical well-being. Limit and curate your exposure to the news. You know, I mean, we do need to keep up, we do need information, but make sure that you're not letting yourself get wrapped up in the 24/7 news cycle, because it's not going to help change the world. It's not going to make you feel any better, but what it's going to do is get you, so your brain's looking for trouble. It's going to obsess over what's happening negative versus looking for the positives in this world. Embrace routine and to-do lists when you're at home. That's really important. Have goals that are doable and check them off each day. That's going to give you a strong sense of accomplishment. Schedule physical activity every day. Stay connected and socially active virtually. If that's what we have to do now, what we're going to do is find ways to connect. Zoom fatigue is a thing. It's real. But putting up with a little Zoom fatigue is a great way to connect with the people that care about you and the people you work with. Keeping connected with our regular life as much as we can helps us feel better about our lives. Learn something new each day. I know people who are trying to learn the guitar, learn a new language, learning magic tricks online, card tricks. There's so many different fun things you could do to learn about if you have a few extra minutes. So turn off the news, spend 10 minutes learning some foreign vocabulary words. And journaling your experiences and feelings. Journaling is really important, and some organizations have suggested we journal now because it might be a historical document later on that we'd want to share with grandchildren, family members, or it might be something that you do just for your own benefit right now, because it helps us to express what we're feeling, to put into words what's going through our mind, because it gives us that sense of control again. And if you're sharing your home, be sure you allow for private space for everyone, whether it's a sofa or a seat. Like a seat on the sofa belongs to someone, like you claim your dinner chair. You need to have psychological distance in the house, because when you spend too much time together, you start rubbing each other the wrong way, nerves will fray, you get irritable. And so we need to practice psychological distancing in the household while practicing social distancing outside the household. And if you're living solo, make sure you schedule daily check-ins, calls, texts, or emails with others, one maybe in the morning and one in the evening. Even if you're protecting yourself and it's not so much worry about would you catch COVID-19, but it's to stay connected to other people because you are isolated. And letting people know how you're feeling, that you're okay, gives the people that care about you reassurance and gives you a sense of security, so that if you miss a text or something does happen, people will know to check in on you. And stop sweating the small stuff seriously. There's a Danish word, pyt, P-Y-T. It's almost like the easy button in Denmark, and it means don't sweat it, let things go. We don't have to worry about everything when we've got so many important things that do require our energy. So letting the small stuff slide right now with kids, with partners, with other people in your household, and with yourself especially. Don't beat yourself up about not learning 10 new vocabulary words in a foreign language. Be glad that you even tried it or even thought about trying it. Celebrate small successes. In relationships, protective practices, check in with each other daily and have a weekly family couple meeting or as frequently as needed. Asking questions, how are you doing? How was your day? What's going on inside of you? Are there ways I could be a better partner to you? Doing those little checks, because sometimes we don't know what someone else needs. And if we check in with them, it gives them the chance to let us know. We're not mind readers. Spending 24/7 with a significant other, as many of us have been, is not going to make us mind readers any more than we would have been before. Make space for conversations and explore feelings without judgment or trying to force change. Go at things with curiosity. That's one thing we learn as counselors. Be curious about other people's experiences. Don't go in with judgment. Go in with curiosity. And encourage your family members to share with you what they need from you. That's really important. And patience and give and take with each other and with yourself are important. Avoid big decisions right now, and don't go into major disagreements right now. When you're stuck inside the house, there's nowhere to go get some breathing room. Make sure that you try to keep things as copacetic as possible. And focus on working together as a united unit, especially when coping with pandemic-related concerns. These are big issues that are beyond what we can control, and so make sure you and your family, you and your partner are working together and not against each other. And be the kind of partner that you yourself would want to have. Think about that sometimes. Are you being the kind of person that you would want to live with? Gives us pause for thought sometimes. Relationship interactions, if isolating away from family or your significant other, communicate frequently and regularly. I think a lot of us have seen people in the news who've been separated from their significant other or their family, living in the basement, all the things that have to happen, but make sure you communicate really frequently. If you're in different homes, communicate. Find creative ways to go on dates or share activities such as watch parties, gaming, and other mutually enjoyable activities. I've heard the expression corona cuffs and coronials for couples that were getting together right before the stay-at-home orders were enacted. And so these blooming romances, they've been separated, but they're still trying to keep connected and keep the romance growing. So some fun things to do. And recognize this period of isolation may take a toll on the relationship. And plan for honest discussions if changes appear. A lot of relationships under stress don't fare as well as we'd like them to, and because this is kind of this uncertain ambiguity that's associated with the stay-at-home order, with jobs, economic loss, so many ways that people have been individually and as a group suffering from the effects of this. Make sure that you talk about these things openly and watch out for these fissures where you don't want to dig too deep right now, but keep in mind there might be conversations you do need to have once life gets back to or starts a new normal. Lastly, parenting can be a challenge. Strive to be the good enough parent. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to do all the things we think great parents would be doing if they had their kids with them 24/7, 7 days a week. Answer questions honestly and age appropriately with your children if they're asking questions. You want to make sure you comfort your kids. Don't frighten your kids. Some kids might find people in masks kind of scary, so kind of normalize that. Wear masks around the house. Have kids maybe decorate masks or choose what they'd like to have on a mask for themselves. Help kids learn through hands-on learning in the home. Build fun into each day and physical activity. Those I've heard from all the parents I know. You've got to get the kids active, and so they'll be worn out by the end of the day and they'll get some good sleep. So make sure you make time to have some fun with them and get them so they're physically engaged, physically active. And care for yourself so you can care for others. I think that's the most essential thing, that what we're doing tonight is giving you tips for taking care of yourself so you can be the best possible partner, friend, parent, colleague that you can be. And so with that, I'm going to ask that we remember we're all in this together. It's going to be all right. A colleague of mine in my department always says it's going to be all right. We'll get through this and be better off by working with, not against others. And if you need assistance, here are some hotlines, helplines that will be available on the PowerPoint. So thank you all very much.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear and see me. So I'm Brian Smith. As Judy said earlier, I'm the director of the Employee Assistance Program, and I wanted to talk a little bit. First, I want to thank Suzanne for just a wealth of valuable information that you offered. And I thought what I'd spend time with you this evening is just giving a little bit of a backdrop for what's happening within our thoughts and our body. I see, I'm not sure that I'm able to move the slides myself, so I don't know if I can get some assistance with that, so bear with me, please. I first wanted you to think about, when you think about the circumstances that we're all going through, I wanted you to think about thoughts like your health concerns that you have, financial concerns that you have, work concerns, concerns that you have about people that you know and that you love. And I wanted just to think about in general the different thoughts that you're having. And what are the thoughts in terms of how they impact you and impact the people around you? And then I wanted you to consider physically, where are you feeling that in your body when you think about that? Some people may feel feelings like in their chest area, their stomach area, their throat, different parts of their body, because this is an important part as we move forward kind of in our talk tonight. And then how would you describe those feelings? Suzanne talked a lot about depression and stress and anxiety and powerlessness. Those are really valuable feelings for us to talk about tonight. And then how did you respond to them? I was listening to Suzanne talk about some of her tips, and I'm kind of laughing at myself because in the first week of being at home, I quickly ate through 2 different bags of Cheetos, and I experienced the puffy ones and then the ball puffy ones. I became expert at that. And so I say these things as I talk about this tonight. I am in no way an expert on how to manage it. I have a lot of experience talking with people through difficult moments and situations. And as Suzanne talked about how we're all in this together, we live a lot of this together too. And I'll come back to Cheetos in a second. If we go to the next slide, during difficult times too, Suzanne referenced this. We all have our own unique way of responding and coping during difficult moments, times of powerlessness and fear. There's no right way to respond. I think part of the difficulty sometimes, there's a lot of great information out there for us to see and read and hear, and sometimes it can be a little too much for our brains and almost lead us to think we're not doing something the right way. And part of what I want to help you with tonight is by understanding your emotions and why we're reacting like we do. You'll know ultimately you really are your own expert on how to get through these difficult times. You've done it before since all of us were young. You've been your own expert on surviving moments of powerlessness and fear. There's a perception image that you may be familiar with in the next slide that is, if you could move to the next slide for me. Thank you. That often you'll see the image on the right, sometimes people will see a younger woman's profile or an older woman. And this is kind of a popular image because by the time we are all 18 years old, we have developed ways that we see the world, things that we think about ourselves, the things that we think about other people, or what we imagine people think about us. And the way we perceive the world or think about things is kind of the key to what we ultimately feel and what we ultimately do. And so the biggest feelings that we'll often struggle with are fear and powerlessness. Fear and powerlessness come from our primary thoughts. So if you think about it, there's kind of like a loop that we all have, a think, feel, do loop that we have. And those thoughts, again, that we had by the time we were 18 include things like, am I good enough? Are things fair or not? Does anybody care necessarily for us or not? And so the things that we think are what cause our automatic feelings. And then ultimately what we do, kind of like as I analyzed my Cheeto eating, right? That was really because I felt disconnected from the people I worked with. And so the thought was I needed some kind of connection or stimulation. I felt a little bit lonely. And so it's kind of typical of human beings. You feed that loop with something different to create that feeling. So part of what we want to be able to just have is an understanding for why we do what we do. The next slide after the fear and powerlessness slide, you will see the term the fight, flight, or freeze reaction. So these are things that you're familiar with in life. That it's an innate, inborn quality in all of us. That since we were young, when we feel fear and powerlessness in our lives, we will have this automatic reaction. I often reference the Mike Tyson reaction when out of that fight reaction that he had that led to the end of his career. I make fun of the Chicago Cubs because I'm a White Sox fan, so I hope I don't offend anybody in the room. But they had a pitcher who had difficulty throwing over to first base, John Lester, and he froze in the first game of the World Series when he went to have to throw a pitch over to first base. But the interesting part with him is his next pitch, he turned to home plate and threw a perfect strike. Because if you think about the thoughts involved for him in that moment, that he couldn't throw to first, that the world knew he couldn't throw to first, and he froze in that moment. And so we all have, Suzanne talked earlier tonight about that freeze reaction, numbing out reaction. So again, in the face of situations where we feel overwhelmed, where we feel fear and powerlessness, these are very automatic chemical reactions. The next slide shows you that part of the brain that's responsible for this reaction is the amygdala. The amygdala are these two little almond-shaped parts of our brain that are responsible for triggering that reaction for us when we feel fear or powerlessness. And so what it does, into the next slide, it'll show you that what it does is it signals off of our adrenal glands cortisol, which is meant to kind of help keep us relaxed and help us through difficult situations. But what happens is over time, the more times we go through events, so for instance, if in previously in your life you've gone through medical crises yourself or with others that you love, you've gone through financial crises yourself or others that you love, or you've had this sense that you felt trapped or powerless, the interesting part about the amygdala, it doesn't know logic. It doesn't know that you're not 10 again or that you're not 15. What it just knows is that you've gone through something before. So you get this massive reaction chemically in your body. And that's why I asked you earlier in the presentation to think about where you feel things, because, and it's even happening as I'm talking to you tonight, is that I will hit things that will be real for you, and your body will give you that reaction. Again, you'll see the next slide will talk about the different things that happen in your body in reaction to the fight or flight response. Legitimately, we breathe differently. We think differently because the oxygen and blood flow is different, because everything pulls towards the center of your body to prepare you just to survive. So that the symptoms that Suzanne talked about earlier are often synonymous with this physical reaction that's happening within your body. So I wanted you to think about, too, the next slide. We, again, learned as behaviorally then ways to react to fear and powerlessness. So what we do is automatic. So me seeking out a Cheeto might be something really automatic from way back in the day as a natural way of just trying to calm myself, potentially. We all have these things. You might isolate, you might withdraw, you might find that you're more active and want to do more things. And so our behaviors are linked to this loop. And it's often the difficulty that we'll have in these times when you have limitations to be able to do the things you used to do to solve your problems and to cope. Then we'll all have natural triggers. So you might be on TV. The next couple of slides will speak to you about things that we hear, see, feel, sense, all the time is triggering that amygdala in your brain then. And they're kind of subconscious things. We're not always aware of them, but you'll be aware of them because your body will have that chemical reaction. It's telling you something is going on, both inside of you and outside of you. And so I want you to consider then that the things that you feel, especially as I'm talking tonight or moving forward, like where are they familiar for you? That's often a common question I'll ask people when I'm talking to them. When have you experienced these thoughts or feelings before? So, for instance, let's say that there's a work dilemma in the home in terms of employment, so there are financial difficulties, and you'll feel that intense feeling in your body and feel maybe overwhelmed by that. And maybe you start to think, where have I felt that way before? And maybe your history says that growing up you went through some of those circumstances, or you as a family went through those circumstances before, or it's an employment concern, or again, a health concern, because these buttons get pushed and your brain automatically kicks off these chemicals to help you survive these situations. Additionally, there are other influences on our emotions, not just within us, but our family, our friends, what's happening at work, health issues, and other life event issues. So let's say that 8 weeks ago you were already contending with a lot of life events, and then the pandemic comes. All those things add additional kind of chemical challenges for us in terms of how we cope and respond in situations. I'm going to jump a couple slides if we could and talk about the effects of fear and powerlessness. If we go to the next slide, that'd be great. Thank you. Suzanne referenced some of these. These are often also synonymous with when we've experienced trauma in our lives. And a lot of people will say, well, it's not like they've gone through some really like deep, intense traumatic experience like occurs in wartime or accidents. But for the brain just knows powerlessness and fears in the chemical reaction. So what you'll be is hypervigilant. You're on guard more. You feel like you're hyper anxious, even though you might feel extremely exhausted, which is another symptom. You might find you have trouble sleeping because your brain is constantly keeping you on alert because we're trying to solve a problem in our life. Um, Concentration and memory difficulties are also common during this time. A lot of times I will have conversations with people where they're worried that they're like quote unquote losing it or that they're having some form of memory difficulty. But it's often associated with these types of experiences. And you'll feel disconnected from yourself or others and have trouble handling your emotions. And that's the root of depression and anxiety. It's our chemical reaction. It's the things that we're thinking and feeling. Um, and then that sense of hopelessness. Because hope, as I think Suzanne offered a lot of hope in her presentation, is really the key through this. Um, so what are the solutions? I'm going to move through some of these because Suzanne covered them. Um, the solutions are always safety first. Your amygdala calms down when it senses that you are safe and that you have control of a situation. So we also do that through teamwork and relying on others and talking. Sometimes, um, we as human beings in relationships, we'll talk to one another and then we'll want to offer advice and tell somebody maybe what they should do to solve their problem. I think Suzanne said it perfectly. We just need to be heard right now during this time. Some other solutions on the next slide, self-care being the key, and finding our power. Some people love to clean during difficult times. Some people don't. Some people love to just stay physically active during this time because, again, you are your own expert and know how to get through this. Another piece of advice I would offer is to always go the opposite of what fear tells you. Fear will stand on your shoulder and tell you the worst possible things that are going to happen. And so usually our behavior out of fear is to avoid or to do something that's going to make things even worse. So the key is going to face your fears because your history tells you how you will survive this moment because you've done it before. The next slide then will give you just some practical, I think that when you think about coping or where our power is, it's writing a list of 5 things that are physical, 5 things with the people that you love, and 5 things that are mental or emotional that you can do for joy. When your brain is going through a difficult or traumatic time, it needs a break to heal. So the key to hobbies are often to give that little space or moment to get away from what is going on around you. Next, moving a sense of belonging, feeling included, feeling like you're being valued, and demonstrating being heard are the things that we can give to others during this time. And it's often, sometimes for some it'll be hard because we don't feel like you have the energy to do it. But giving those things to others, connection, importance, demonstrating that they're being heard, because there's no greater gift to give to somebody than when what they think is a crazy thought is something that you say, yeah, that totally makes sense to me. Then moving forward, I want you to just think for yourselves, what do you need most from others as you move forward as a person, a family member, maybe as an employee? And next I wanted you to think about what others needed from you moving forward, because it's really our greatest power. Some of the last tips I'll go through, Suzanne, already talked about setting up a schedule and a routine for yourself, creating a support network. And just know that she said it perfectly. It's what you're feeling is completely normal during this time. And it's also really normal if you don't feel like coping or you don't feel like doing certain things. But as you push yourself through it, you'll find that gradually you'll come back to who you've always been. If you could jump a couple slides ahead, please. Be flexible with yourself and be kind to yourself. And I think it's really important parenting-wise too, and certainly we'll take questions tonight if you have more specific questions. A lot of parents will think that they will be fearful that they're failing their children during this time, that they're not giving them the educational structure or opportunity or time and attention because parents themselves are trying to balance parenting and working from home and running their household. And so I think it's really critical for parents to be kind to themselves, and also understand you as a parent are going to remember this time much more than the children are going to remember this time. And that, so the next slide we'll talk about, as a parent, building in time to play, scheduling time to read. It's also okay if kids have more screen time, be it television or online time. There's a wealth of online resources out there. At NIU, we had a couple of trainings where we just had parents get online and share what they had done, different activities and cool events that they had done. And so there are a lot of cool online suggestions for kids. I always wanted to know, I want to note too, when a child comes to their parent and they say that they're bored, what they're really communicating, in my experience, is that they're lonely. They just don't have the language to say it. And so it's kind of natural, we as parents would say, well, go find something to do. But it's okay to be able to continue to talk to kids about what they're feeling and normalizing that. And because, again, kids, just like you, they're their own experts, what they need to get through, and they will tell you what they need. And we can brainstorm together maybe some activities tonight if that would be helpful as we go forward. So that's kind of the bulk of what I had. I wanted to defer then to Sarah, and when we can come back with any questions if you might have specifically for me.
Hello. Hello. I hope you can hear me. If not, somebody will let me know. I appreciate your time tonight, and apologize because I'm having a little allergy issue, so I'm got a little throat thing going on, although I'm not sick, just allergies, I swear. Okay. Here there's a little static, but I don't know what to do to fix that, so maybe I'll turn down my volume and that will help. Does that help? Okay. All right, so that's better. Okay. So I wanted to talk to you, Suzanne and Brian both talked to you about the situations that you're experiencing personally and inside yourself. And I wanted to translate that to work. My webcam is on. Sorry. Let me make sure it's, start sharing. Sorry. Okay. There we go. Okay. So I wanted to relate exactly what they were talking about, but relate it more to how you are dealing with work and how you're dealing with work from home, if that's applying to you. Okay. So the first thing to think about, I'm saying a lot of these things from the perspective of a supervisor, but it doesn't just apply to supervisors. Maybe your supervisor is not awesome at being a supervisor of somebody who works from home. So it's something you're going to have to initiate if the supervisor doesn't. So just think about it that way. It applies in going both directions. All right, first of all, set clear expectations for communication and for your work. The thing we have to remember is that when we are supervising somebody who's working from home, or if we are working from home, that we are working on projects. They are itemized projects or plans that we are working through. It's not exactly keeping track of, are you working 7.5 hours in your day from your computer or from your phone? We can't look at things by hours of the day. If you're an hourly employee, it makes it a little bit tricky, but that's something you work out with your supervisor. But as a supervisor, you are really focusing on, is this person getting a particular project done in a particular reasonable amount of time? So if we have work that needs to be done this week, and we have a project that needs to be done this week, then by Friday, I should be getting a status report from the employee. And so we need to set the expectations about the actual work, but then also set the expectations about how communication is going to happen. And the title of my slide is Over Communicate. You know, when we are down the hall from somebody in an office space, we see them right, you know, when we walk past them to go down to the bathroom or to go get some coffee or water. But when we're working from home, we don't have that same I just bump into you interaction. And so you actually have to plan your interactions and set expectations of what interactions will be. So think about talking about projects, like I was just saying. If you've got a project due, when are reasonable times that you should be checking in with your staff member, or you should be checking in with your supervisor, and set actual times that we will be doing that. So if you haven't already, then, you know, we have something due on Friday. Today is Wednesday. So maybe on Friday morning, we will check in with each other so that we can make sure that the situation or this project gets done by Friday afternoon. Set those plans. Also, set regular one-on-one meetings. Even when we are working in the same office, it is shocking to me frequently how frequently people do not do one-on-one meetings with supervisors and staff. They will come to my office to talk with me about some communication problem, or that somebody's not doing their job, or they will talk to me about how hard it is to supervise this person. And so I will ask, how frequently do you meet with this person one-on-one? And the response is, oh, we don't do that. We have staff meetings whenever we need to, but we don't meet one-on-one. Okay, well, we really need to think about meeting one-on-one and making that a regular part of the work week. Or if it doesn't need to be every week, then maybe every 2 weeks. But having it be a regular part of your work environment that you meet one-on-one. Now that we're working remotely, it is even more important to meet one-on-one with individuals in your work area. So if you're the supervisor, start scheduling them. And it's not a thing to make people scared, and it's not a time to discipline everyone and be really hard on them. Instead, it's a time to check in, it's a time to listen, but it's also a time to give direction. So maybe somebody isn't doing what you need them to do, and it's time to correct them. And again, not to be super harsh and come down on them that you're a horrible person because you didn't get your work done. Instead, you inquire, you know, you didn't get this done by today. Can you tell me what's going on? And ask the person what happened. And then, okay, so now what I need you to do is, and give them clear direction on what needs to be next, what needs to happen next. Another thing to think about is to have those check-ins. One thing I've heard about, though, since NIU's gone online is supervisors who check in every morning at the beginning of the day and every evening at the end of the day. And you are expected to be at your computer anytime that I check. So if we have a messaging system, Teams or Skype, you have to be available every time I reach out to you. Okay, that's not really reasonable in this time. If you are a regular work from home person and you always work from home, then maybe that's regular at that time. But in this time, when we are all working from home and we have everybody else in our house at home too, it is not reasonable to expect that everybody will be available from 8 to 4:30 every day, or whatever your normal work shift is. Because people might have care issues, taking care of children, taking care of elderly parents, or having to homeschool children, or having to deal with some home emergency that they wouldn't be dealing with if they were working in an office. So it's one of those things that, yes, you might check in with people every day in the morning, but at a set time that works for everybody. If you have staff members who cannot physically meet because they've got 3 children running around in the background because they haven't started their school day yet, then that's not going to work right now. And we have to be flexible with one another. All right. Some other things to think about when you're this over communication is, again, to think about projects and what exactly is needed. It is hard when we are away from each other to think about exactly what is needed and to be able to convey that specifically. Where you might have just been able to flick your wrist or give a look and the other person could read you when you were face to face. It's harder to do when you're not face to face. And so more explicit directions might be required than what you used to do when we were all together. Also, you need to set some expectations and boundaries about how communication is going to happen. If I email you, how quickly can I expect a response from email? If I call you, am I going to call you on your personal cell phone? And if I am, what am I expecting for your availability? Also, what can I give as far as availability? So it might be that we use some sort of messaging app like Teams or WhatsApp or whatever your business uses and your office uses. And we message each other and we expect that within an hour or two you'll get back. Or if it's something that doesn't even require an hour or two, then maybe I'll just email you and you get to it when you get to it. So within a day or 2 days, you'll get back to my email. Or if it's something that's really urgent, I will either text your private cell phone, or if you have a work phone, or I will call you because it's urgent. Maybe lay out those expectations, and that will be very helpful so that people know what they have to keep an eye on and how quickly you're expecting a response. Is it an email? Just get back to me when you can. Or is it an urgent message that I need a response right now? The different method of communication will dictate how the person interprets that. But everybody's got to be on the same page, and everybody has to know that when I'm sending you a text message, that means that I need an answer now. Because if you send that text message and it's hours before you get a response, you're going to be real irritated. But if that person you're working with didn't know that a text message meant anything more than just a regular text message, they're not going to answer in a timely fashion, in what you consider to be a timely fashion. So just make sure the ground rules are all set out and laid out before you move on. All right. When talking about how we should be communicating, I'm really going to encourage you to think about using video technology. It's really hard to interpret email, as we have all experienced. I'm very confident we have all experienced when people send email messages and the tone is misinterpreted. If you're used to dealing with somebody in a particular way, maybe they're sarcastic, maybe they're a little bit harsh, but face to face you can deal with that. Well, now, as Suzanne and Brian both addressed or alluded to, we're separate from each other. Nerves are a little bit frayed right now. Everybody's a little bit on edge. So if you send a written message, an email, a messaging app, a text message, and you have a little tone in there that maybe you don't realize, or it's just your natural tone, it can be completely misinterpreted on the other end. So try to work on video apps where you can. If it's a huge staff meeting, like I've been on a couple meetings that have had 200 people on them, then having video on all the time is not always helpful. But if it's a smaller meeting where you can have everybody on a screen and you can see people, or when they're talking, they're up on the screen. It's really helpful to read other people's body language, their facial expressions, and have more of a natural conversation. Also, email is not always super helpful, because I'm sure you've noticed in your offices that people have a tendency to reply all when it doesn't need to be reply all. So then you end up with 500 reply alls to an email, and it wastes people's time, it wastes space, it wastes mental energy, because all these people are reply all, reply all, reply all. So if you can avoid just getting stuck in an email conversation and transfer it to a video conversation. You'll be able to handle things in the moment, and also you will be able to read each other's body language and tone and volume and facial expressions and sarcasm or not. Another thing to think about, especially if you're using video chats, but really anytime, is to trust your gut. If you feel like something's wrong, it's probably wrong. There's probably something wrong. And so it might be time to think about inquiring about that. So if I'm talking to somebody on a video chat and I notice they're not really behaving how they used to when we were in the office, and something seems a little bit off, maybe I will take that conversation offline. So after our meeting is done, if we are meeting with a group of people, then I will take that conversation offline and I will message the person privately and say, hey, you didn't seem like yourself today. Is everything okay? A lot of times people are scared to ask that question because they're like, I'm not a therapist. If I ask and they actually tell me something's wrong, what am I supposed to do with that information? Okay, so you don't have to be able to solve the problem in order to inquire and ask if somebody's okay. Also, because there are other places, and I know that Judy and Aileen are going to put Suzanne's last slide up. They're going to put that up at the end so that you can see all the resources that Suzanne listed. There are a million resources on NIU's campus, out in the community. If you don't live in the DeKalb area, farther away, there are lots of resources. So you personally don't have to be able to solve somebody else's problems. Instead, you refer them out. But just asking the question creates a connection, and it lets that person know you care. And it could be nothing. It could be, yeah, I'm acting differently on video because I know I have children or pets or whatever, or my house is falling down just off camera and you can't see, something is happening. And so, yeah, I'm acting weird because it's weird in my house. Or it could be that something's really wrong. There's a health concern. Somebody is having a mental health concern and they're not able to access their medical professionals, whatever. There could be something seriously wrong, and you are the person to reach out and make that connection. It helps you and it helps that person and it helps your connection with each other and to work better together. One thing to think about, I've mentioned tone. If you're a sarcastic person, I'm a sarcastic person, consider not using sarcasm in this time, because not everybody interprets sarcasm the same way, and it can be misinterpreted very easily. I think there are multiple types of sarcasm. I think there's the funny, silly, poking fun kind of sarcasm, and there's then the mean, trying to make you feel bad sarcasm, and sometimes those get confused. So maybe try to avoid sarcasm right now, especially if it's in writing. Not good. But even on video chats, it can be misinterpreted. So unless you're really close with somebody or you're sure it's going to be taken the right way, maybe avoid it right now. All right. Attitude is really everything right now and all the time, actually. But we're talking about working remotely and being remote. You really have to trust the people you're working with. You have to trust them. There's a reason you hired them, or there's a reason somebody else hired them to do their job, that they are professionals and they will get their job done. They will do their work. It might not be in that 8 to 4:30 time frame. It might have to be after their kids go to bed, or during nap time, or something else. It might be at a different time, but they are going to get their work done. And if they aren't, you have ways to address that. If somebody isn't able to get their work done, you can talk to them about it. You can ask them why. You can see if there's any support you can lend. There are other ways to handle it other than just throwing up your hands or getting really angry. Trust the people you're working with. They are professionals. They do know what they're doing. They do know how to do their jobs. So trust them. If you don't trust them, then you're going to be the supervisor who's like, I need to see you at 8 o'clock in the morning and I will see you at 4:30 and you need to be available to me at all times, blah, 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 blah. Not helpful. that adds stress. It adds stress to you because it's extra time. Do you really have that time to check in with all your employees or with your colleagues at 8 and 4:30 and however many other times during the day? It adds stress to you and it adds stress to them. It's unnecessary. Also, focus on the goals for the project or professional development goals for the staff member. We're not focusing on the activity and how often and how many hours they're sitting in front of their computer. Instead, we are focusing on goals, not the activity. Are they meeting their goals? Whatever those goals are. Is it a particular project? Is it a professional development plan? What is it? That is what we need to be working on. Because busy work is not enough. Why would we spend our time doing busy work if it has no point? So think about the goals for your communication, for a project you're working on, or just goals for a day. Sometimes, as both Suzanne and Brian alluded to, it is really rough just getting stuff done. So maybe today we have one goal, and that is to accomplish one thing, one task. Let's see, today is April 15th? Taxes got pushed off. So maybe your goal for today is something about your taxes, getting those taxes done, or I'm just going to collect the paperwork, just get it all together. If it's something for work, you have set a goal, one thing I'm going to accomplish, because then once you check that off, you can move on to the next thing. But when you're looking at something that's huge, it gets really overwhelming. So set goals and mark them off as you go. And I'm just going to focus on the first one. And then once you focus on that first one, you can move on to the second one without it being too overwhelming. Also think about, Suzanne and Brian both talked about giving yourself grace. And that is true. Right now it's hard. It's not exactly what we're used to. And that causes a lot of stress. They talked about it. So you have to give yourself grace, but also remember that grace applies to the other people you work with too. Other people have stuff going on in their homes, in their lives, and it is really challenging right now to live up to other people's expectations as well as our own expectations. So give some grace. Most of us do not have life and death jobs. Some people are in emergency services and they do. But most of us do not. So we have administrative things that we're doing. So you can give grace to each other if a deadline is missed or there is a mistake here or there. People are doing the best they can. Also think about, in the whole giving grace thing, we aren't choosing to be home right now. So that is a big difference from a normal work at home environment. If you are somebody who does work at home all the time anyway, even now it's still different for you because probably there are other people in your home now when there weren't before. So people have, before you might have childcare or your disabled adult child was going to daycare, adult daycare, or your disabled elderly parent was being taken care of by a home health aide or whatever. You had other people who were part of your network. And now, in most of those circumstances, those other people are gone because they're stay at home too. So when people don't have those support systems in place anymore and everything is on them, it was not their choice to make that happen. And so they're doing the best they can to work through it the best they can. Okay. Next tip is to build community. It is really hard when we're not all in the same office together. You can't just stop by somebody's desk and say, hey, how are things going? So you have to build time into when you have those meetings. So if you're having a staff meeting of everybody in your office, maybe reserve the first few minutes, the first 5 minutes of time is going to be to ask questions and have that personal human interaction that is not business related, it's not anything. That personal human interaction. If you know somebody has kids, ask them how their kids are doing. Or does anybody have a funny story this week? Okay, everybody show us your pets, and get the pets on the video. Or, how is your house doing? I know you were having to repair your roof. Ask those personal questions. We're not talking about super personal questions that are inappropriate where you'll be sent to HR or Title IX. We're not talking about that, to be clear. Instead, we are talking about just those human interactions that you would normally ask people. Hey, I know you had a birthday this weekend. How was it? Or you were trying to celebrate something for your child. How did that go without people being able to come over to your house? Ask those types of questions and reserve time to make that happen. I know there are some departments I've heard about who, excuse me, are asking a particular question every day. Like, I think Suzanne's department was asking questions about things like, what can you not live without? If you're stuck in your house, what can you not live without? And ask everybody. It's an icebreaker thing, but it also helps develop that connection that we would have naturally with each other. Also think about celebrating milestones and other celebrations. So if somebody is having their 20th anniversary working with you, let's celebrate that and find ways with memes or GIFs, or if you are having, if you could have something delivered to their house, maybe, whatever works for you and your work environment, celebrate those things. Note the milestones. Some departments at NIU, I know, have potlucks every Wednesday or whatever day of the week. Every Friday they do a potluck and everybody brings food. Okay, well, you can't do that right now, but maybe you still could every Friday have a potluck at lunch where everybody brings their lunch and has lunch together. So I might be sitting here eating my peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and you might be having leftovers from dinner last night, and we could all share what are we all eating for lunch today, and sit and chat and talk and be social the way we were when we were back in our offices. My partner, he and his team, they do on Wednesday at 4 o'clock, hump day, they have a happy hour every Wednesday at 4 o'clock where they get together on the video chat and they all have their drink. And, not everybody drinks alcohol. So some people are drinking coffee, some people are drinking water, and some people are drinking their adult beverage, whatever. But it is their way to connect and say, okay, we made it through the first half of this week. We can do this. And then they go off and do their own thing. Also, think about encouraging self-care for your staff, your colleagues. Maybe you say, okay, at lunchtime, how about we all go for a walk? Now today in Northern Illinois, we had snow and it's really chilly and windy and gross. So maybe today would not have been an ideal day, but when the temperatures start to creep up a little bit, maybe we can all get on, if we have smartphones, we can get on Zoom on our Teams on our smartphones, and we can all walk together. All right, let's go. Everybody get your shoes on. We're going out. And go out of the house for 15 minutes and just walk and talk together outside. Either way, you're encouraging that human connection that we are all desperately missing right now. And if you have other people in your house, you've got them, but sometimes that's just not enough, or it might be a little too much, and you need other people who are separate. All right, the last thing to think about is to be the support, especially if you're the supervisor. I always talk about somebody's got to be the adult in the room. You're the adult. But even if you're not the supervisor, if you're a colleague, you still can provide that support function for your colleagues or for your supervisor. If you're a supervisor, really, this first part is your job. Do your colleagues have what they need to get their job done? So if somebody has only one monitor and they really need two for their work, is there a way for you to get them an additional monitor that they can bring home? if their internet, they live out in the country and their internet is super spotty, is there a way that your department can provide something that'll magnify or hotspot or something that will magnify the internet connection for them, because we're so dependent on that right now. Is there something that you can do or help your organization do to help this person have the tools that they need? Another thing to think about is when you are checking on people. So that can be in their one-on-one conversations, meetings with between supervisors and staff, or just checking in because you feel like something was weird in the last meeting, or you just haven't talked to the person in a while. And asking them how they're doing, but then also asking them, is there a way that I could support you better? And you could be a supervisor and ask that question to your staff. Is there a way I can support you better? And C, is there something else that this person needs that would make life so much better, or will make it this much better, but that this much means everything? If you are not a supervisor and you're talking to colleagues or your supervisor, you could also ask them that question. That is not absurd to do. How can I better support you? How can I better support this department and make this situation better? You can ask that question too. And when it's a genuine question, people appreciate that beyond measure. Those are all the tips that I have. I feel like we covered a lot, so I'm going to turn it back over to Judy for questions.
Thank you, Suzanne, Brian, and Sarah. We're going to take a couple minutes now to get some questions up. Please remember that we always have discussion. We don't necessarily have Q&A, so the whole idea behind these three speakers is to lead a discussion. So please think about something that you might ask us or comment on. And this is a great time to grab a beverage, another beverage. So we'll take a couple of minutes to get a couple of questions up here. And in the meantime, I just wanted to remind you that April 29th is going to be our next virtual STEM Café, which is going to be on the science behind the virus, and that'll be at 6 o'clock as well. And don't forget to save the date for STEM Fest, which is going to be October 31st, 2020 this year. Anyway, so please send us some comments, and we'll take in a couple of minutes, we'll read those questions. Thank you. Okay, I think we need to put our webcams on so that they can see us, and I think you have some signals about who might answer the question. Okay, I'm going to start with the first one. First of all, there was a question a few minutes ago about will we put that slide up again, and here it is. So that is our resources slide. And keep in mind, too, that we are going to be putting this particular STEM Cafe up on our website, NIU STEAM. So if you missed parts of it, or you were having some technical difficulties during and you didn't get the full experience, we will have that videotaped, and in a couple of days you'll be able to access it. Okay, so our first question is, oh my goodness, I'm used to using 3 monitors and I'm told that I cannot even get 1 monitor. I work on a screen the size of a piece of paper. I've talked about it 3 times and the answer is no. I can't see the rest of this question. It's all I got here. Oh, wait a minute. But then I am asked, but please tell me how I can support you. Do you want to take that one?
This is really hard. This is really hard when the university, if you're working at the university, or your other organization you work at is stretched tight, stretched thin. And one suggestion might be to reapproach. It sounds like you said you've talked about it 3 times, but maybe asking again in a different way. So you could say, okay, I was working on our budgets, and normally I would have 3 screens set up and be able to go between last year's budget, this year's budget, and the future budget for next year. And I'm not able to do that because I have a postage stamp for a screen. Is there any possible way I could go to campus and meet somebody in technology or in IT and see if they have one I can borrow? I'll bring it back, or I'm happy to go back to my office and take the one off of my desk if somebody will let me in the building, so that you're not actually costing anybody any money. But are there other ways that you can access something as simple as a monitor? It seems like there should be extra monitors that nobody's using right now in whatever organization you work for. So suggesting alternate ways where you're not ordering something off of Amazon and spending money, but maybe suggesting an alternate way to get the same thing accomplished. I hope that's helpful. And also using an example of why what you've got right now is not sufficient.
Okay, our next question is, do you have any additional advice for people who live alone?
I think that.
I'll take
go ahead.
that.
Thanks, Susan.
Oh, okay. Well,
No, go ahead.
it's important that if you have technology available, because when we have technology, it allows us to connect and reach out. And there are a lot of ways you can use technology. You can build in, if you have friends, you can do check-ins. I think Sarah mentioned virtual walks. There's also connections with classes online. There are yoga classes. There are a lot of ways that people are reaching out to those of us who might live alone. And in addition, reaching out for, if you feel totally isolated, reaching out to telemental health is an option. But sometimes when we are isolated, it's overwhelming in ways we can't imagine it would be, because we know there's nothing much we can do to get beyond the home. And so reaching out to friends, reaching out to family, colleagues, connecting with people on a regular basis is really key. And Brian might have.
Yeah, I love what you said. I think I would add to that too, that sometimes, when we're alone, we're hesitant to reach out because maybe we think that others are not concerned about us or that we would be burdening somebody. So I guess part of it is wanting you to take a look at, like, what are some of the thoughts that you have associated with reaching out to others. Because the reality is sometimes other people don't know what they need from us. So maybe they don't reach out to you because they assume you're fine. So I guess part of it is taking a look at what are some of the unique challenges that you face, and then just like Suzanne said, taking some of those risks to reach out to others to let them know what you need. Because this is a time, I think, where people want to also give and help others.
And if you know somebody who is alone,
And for those of you that are out there,
if you know somebody who's alone, then thinking about reaching out to them and putting it on your calendar, to check in, or if you know somebody who's waiting for doctor results from a medical test, put it on your calendar. I tend to forget unless I write it down. And then 3 days have passed, and then I go, oh my gosh, I totally forgot to check in with this person. So put it on your calendar, and then also think about other things you can do. So this is going to sound silly. Anybody who's a child of the 80s will hopefully appreciate this. I've got a friend who is very lonely. She's extremely social, and the fact that she's stuck home all by herself is killing her. And she is just so lonely. And so my daughters and I just keep going over to her house and doing weird things outside. And so we chalked her sidewalk one day with messages and silly pictures. And then another day, I was driving by after going to the store. And so I went and stood, 30 feet away from her front door. I was nowhere near her, had my mask on, and I pretended like I was John Cusack and Say Anything, and I held my phone above my head. And, it was just, and I called her and said, come to your front door. Just something silly and stupid, and we talked to each other 30 feet away, no contact, whatever. But it was enough to help her get through a little hump that she was feeling. And so thinking about that for others is really helpful.
And you might have to adjust your volume depending on which of us is talking. Anyway, here's another one. How do you diffuse situations where group meetings have one person more dominant in an online meeting, and while unintentional, tends to shut everyone else down without realizing they are doing it?
Sometimes in meeting chats, private chats. Go ahead, Sarah.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say sometimes in meeting chats, or because people don't realize it. And if you're lonely, you may talk more than you normally would now when we get together in virtual meetings. And so somebody might need to bring it to our attention. And as I said, in meeting chats that are private messages, sometimes those, will get someone's attention. Conversations outside of the meeting are also helpful.
And sometimes having to intervene, just like maybe an instructor would in a classroom, and say, I really appreciate your comments. I'm going to ask some other people to contribute now. Whoever's leading the meeting has to take control. So doing it that way, or saying, even if it's not the person leading the meeting, if I suddenly cut off Suzanne and just start talking over her, then somebody else needs to say, whoa, 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 Suzanne wasn't done. Let's let her finish. And that happens a lot. We see that a lot in gendered situations in particular, but other situations too, where perhaps a group of people traditionally, frequently get talked over and aren't able to contribute as much. And it's the rest of us in the group have to say something. Not rude. We don't have to be mean about it. But just saying, whoa, whoa, this person wasn't done. Please let them finish. Or let's hear from more people. I appreciate your point of view, but let's also hear from other people in the group. And then if that doesn't work, then that's the time to take it offline, in particular the way that Suzanne was suggesting, either in a note in the chat box or a call afterwards or some other type of messaging.
Well, one tip I always have in one of those situations, and let's say you're the one setting the boundary, is sometimes saying out loud to that person what you're afraid of. So if I were to say, look, Sarah, at the risk of offending you, and I don't want to because I want to hear what you have to say, just maybe if we could be mindful of giving other people a chance to talk. But sometimes if we say the biggest fear that we have, it helps get our anxiety down to set boundaries with other people. And this is a huge time to have to set boundaries with people, both people in our own houses and as we try to do work with one another. But I think what you bring up is one of the hardest, most difficult social work moments right now.
Okay, here's one for anyone. What's your favorite new hobby?
Other than eating Cheetos,
Trying to groom my dog. That was a big hobby for me for about a day. I'm over it.
Okay, the next question. Could you repeat, post the date and topic for the next session? And that, again, is April 29th, and the topic is the science behind the virus. And Dr. Singh is the speaker. For the next one, just a minute here. What is the appropriate response to a friend or staff member who has lost a family member during this time, not necessarily due to the virus?
I'm sorry, Judy, could you repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
Yes, I will. I'm sorry. What is the appropriate response to a friend or a staff member who has lost a family member during this time, not necessarily due to virus?
If you don't mind, I'll take that one, and please jump in, everybody else. First of all, the favorite hobby has been listening to online books that I hadn't done before, just to go back to that. I had to kind of think about that, the new hobby. I think loss is one of the most difficult conversations to have with people, because it's a powerless spot for us, because we don't know what's the right thing to say or do to show that we care or to comfort them. So legitimately, I think the best thing to do is just ask them to tell their story and experience. Just that simple check-in. I'm sorry for your loss. Tell me a little bit what you're going through. What's the experience been like? I think that also a mistake we'll make is usually tell our own experiences to somebody to try to prove to them that we understand maybe what they're going through, where really they just want to tell their story and probably be heard and affirmed for what their experience is. And just genuine, true compassion and care is the greatest gift you could give somebody when they've lost somebody. Would be my advice.
And you can ask them what they need.
Yeah.
And also, in the whole thing, both Brian and Suzanne are saying is ask questions and listen. That's the greatest thing. People want to be heard and want to talk, and they feel like they're a burden, and so they don't. But you can ask simple questions like, tell me about this person. Talking about the person, I'll just will speak from my own personal experience with loss. Talking about the person, and well, in this circumstance, they would always say that. Or they, do you know what my dad used to say all the time? Blah, blah, blah. And that's the thing that heals. And so being able to say those things to somebody and not feel like you're burdening them is huge.
Here is a comment from somebody that would help the person that needed the 3 screens that was earlier. This person is saying that he's using a 40-inch flat screen TV as a monitor.
Nice.
So that might
that is a possibility. Yeah, we've done that here. We connected a TV screen to the computer for a monitor.
Nice.
That's a great idea.
Okay, we had this come up in OUS administrative staff this afternoon. Perhaps they can borrow a monitor from another department. Another solution. Okay, I just want to say thank you so much to the 3 speakers. I really appreciated hearing them speak and then them reminding me that I am doing the best I can.
Nice. Yes.
Absolutely.
Here's one. Appreciate the program and great points offered by all 3 speakers, especially the reminder everyone handles this differently and no right or wrong way to handle this pandemic crisis. My husband keeps cooking and I just want to stay out of the kitchen and watch the birds on the feeder. Okay, I spend a lot of my day job helping students navigate grief and anxiety related to climate change. With the pandemic, what's usually been a tough conversation anyway has gotten even harder. Do you have thoughts on managing the additional emotional labor that we know is so important for our students that so many of us are navigating right now?
I think one thing with issues like this, I think finding ways to advocate for the cause, advocate for others, advocate for themselves, and turning those feelings into action that can bring some kind of positive change or positive effort can sometimes make a difference with students because they do want to change the world, and helping them find ways to attack these big issues in small, manageable bites can sometimes be very satisfying and healing.
I work with students who are really struggling with the internship and job search process. What can we say to these individuals? How can I advocate for them when I cannot control employer decisions right now, but their school department is still pressuring them a deadline to find internships by May 15th?
I think that's a really hard one that school departments are soon going to find out is not necessarily how life is going to go this time. I don't know. It's not going to be realistic, and it's not realistic for you to put pressure on yourself or for the students to put pressure on themselves to get this done. Networking, of course, is going to be key, just like it always is. It's always key. And so if they can start looking in non-traditional ways to try to find internships or externships or whatever, that's going to be essential, particularly this time around, even though it's always essential. And then there's going to be a certain level of helplessness. There just is, because a lot of industries, including higher education right now, don't know what's going to happen next, because it really depends on how long everybody is closed and how long the stay-at-home order is in place. And until we know that, then we're not going to know what budgets are and who we're allowed to hire and whether we're allowed to have paid positions or not. And so there's a certain amount of the unknown that all of us are having to deal with, and your students are stuck in it. And soon the department will realize that it's not just one student, it's a lot of students who are all in the same boat.
I was just thinking about adding to, earlier there was the question about loss and how to respond to that. And I think that the real talk for students is just a certain sense of loss or mourning around what they anticipated was going to be their path and experience in these years in school. And so sometimes just that real talk of just talking through the fact that, like, this is not going to be what they had expected or what they thought they were, the path that they were going to be on. So I think about the loss of graduations and the loss of opportunities and the loss of a traditional transition into the workforce is something that is part of the conversation that can be had, just to normalize that and affirm that for them. And that, and again, pointing out to them, what have they done in the past to overcome those types of difficult circumstances? Because this is what often defines people and what defines what they're made of ultimately, and it's trying to create that hope ultimately. But it's just a very sad, real situation, unfortunately, for them too.
Absolutely.
Okay, here's another question. What are some other suggestions on nurturing a sense of community within your office department if leadership is busy with other tasks and majority of staff are isolated on their own?
I think the things that we all talked about, it's the same, because you don't have to be the leader of the department to make these things happen. None of them are dependent on some sort of title. It's all just, one person making a suggestion. And so if you know that everybody in your department likes to knit, you know what? How about over lunch, we all sit together and knit and show each other the projects we're working on, or whatever. Or let's have book club. I know you all like to read, so let's all get together maybe after work on Fridays or whatever day and talk about this. Or if your department chair, division head, whoever it is, doesn't like to do video meetings, you can initiate video meetings and have video meetings with your colleagues. And you can invite the chair or director, but they don't have to come if they don't want to. You can do all those different things that you did normally and do them remotely.
Absolutely. Water cooler chats on a daily basis. There are all sorts of things you can do to connect with the people that you connected with on a daily basis. Being creative and finding, and anyone in the department can set those up. It doesn't have to be the head of the department. So reaching out.
Okay, here's the next question. Where do you see people-to-people interactions headed once this pandemic is over?
I think that's a tough one because it could go one of either two directions, don't you think? It could go that people are scared to be near each other. So all the people who used to be huggers are never going to hug anybody again, or we don't shake hands again. Or it could go the opposite direction where people are so starved for that human interaction and that human touch that they go, like, I'm hugging everybody and I don't care, which I don't recommend, by the way, especially in a professional environment. I'm just going to throw that out there. You should always ask permission before you hug anybody or just don't do that. But past that, yeah, I think it could go either direction. What do the two of you think?
Yeah, people say that we're going to be super eager to get back into that connectivity, and skin hunger is a real thing. All these people who are living alone, my heart goes out to them, who don't have someone to hug at the end of the day or someone to put a hand on their shoulder. But I think that people are going to be wary for a while, for sure, and just the fear that that touch can bring illness, and I think we'll be more aware of our connection to everyone in the greater scheme. The idea that the interconnection, public health is personal health. So I think that will change the way we think.
Okay, next question. I'll offer a warning about the chat function though. If you're in a recorded meeting, even private comments are included in meeting transcripts.
And if you work for a public institution like Northern Illinois University, it's all subject to the Freedom of Information Act. So be careful. Well, not all of it, but many things are subject to the Freedom of Information Act.
All right, next question. Scratch the question. I meant, where do you see individual person-to-person interactions headed once this is all over? I think we answered that. Thank you for normalizing our feelings. Much appreciation for this conversation tonight. I'm enjoying being home with my family, but I recognize not all are feeling this way. I feel strange sometimes sharing my perspective. Are others grateful for this time?
I think a lot of people are on the balance. I think it brought new stressors that we weren't predicting. I think working remotely is more stressful. Things take longer. We might feel conflicts between home and work that we wouldn't feel if we could walk out at 4:30 or 5 every day. But I think a lot of us are grateful for this time and the respect to our person that is being shown by external forces.
I think you saying that out loud, too, is a critical part of what we're talking about tonight, because our office has already begun to have conversations around how do we help staff return to the workplace now that everybody's adjusted to being home. Because I think there's also been it's been a humbling moment for people, too. I think it's brought us back to what matters, and I think getting connected with like ourselves and others. And so I think it's going to change the world, change a lot of ways that we interact with each other too. To go back to that question too, I think nonverbal and verbal communication will become all the more important in terms of communicating connectivity between us. And so going back to this last question, I think it's perfectly stated and a common reaction, yes, for people. It's going to be a hard adjustment going back to work for many.
Here's a comment. Thank you. Excellent program. I definitely think the sense of loss is huge. Many of the plans we made can't happen anymore.
Yeah. Yes. A lot of loss.
A lot of loss.
There's one. Our department is using a chat app called GroupMe. It's been a great way to keep everyone connected and share things with everyone.
Thank you. That's cool.
Any tips for staying motivated while working at home? I really want to be doing my 7.5 hours a day, but it's really tough for so many of the reasons mentioned tonight.
That is a tough one. It is tough to do the 7.5. But I think Sarah talked about the fact is that you're there to do the tasks that need to get done, setting goals, and recognizing that this is just a temporary passage. This isn't forever, and that what do I need to do today to reach my goals for my job as we begin, as Brian said, getting ready to move back to a different environment again. But not to beat yourself up because you can't put in 7.5 hours each day.
There's one thing I've heard from our administration over and over again in multiple meetings is that you are available to work. So if somebody called on you, you would be available. Therefore, you are working. We are counting that. The governor of the state of Illinois is counting that. And the ethics office is counting that. So don't beat yourself up that you're not working exactly 7.5 hours. You are doing the projects that need to be done. You are getting them done, and that is good. If you're having trouble throughout the day, do the things that you would probably tell children to do. Break things down, like Suzanne was talking about earlier, into small chunks. And then after you do one small chunk, reward yourself. You get to get up and go get a snack. Or you get to get up and walk around the house. Or walk outside. Or if there's something because you're sitting at home and you're seeing things that need to be done that are bothering you, like laundry or something, that needs to be done, then okay, I'm going to do this one segment of my task, and then after that, I'm going to go fold laundry, and then I'll come back. And that's the best way that I've found to keep motivated is to break it up into smaller tasks. If I'm not being motivated, break it smaller and smaller and smaller until I can I can just get that done and then move on to something that's more enjoyable or I feel like is necessary in my home, and then come back.
Thank you, Sarah, for that. I think that works for a lot of situations. I hear this person about the monitor saying the first thing I'm doing when I get back is hugging my monitor.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's great.
I love it. We don't know how much we appreciate something until we don't have it any longer.
Here's one. If Leo Buscaglia were alive today, he would be going nuts with the prospect of never hugging another person again. Of course, that was his calling card. Also wanted to say thanks to our panel tonight for providing useful information that all of us can utilize in these less than ordinary times. And Suzanne, keep up the great work on those periodic perspective spots that you do on WNIJ. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. It's been a delight to share information. I learned from Sarah and from Brian an awful lot. And the questions and discussion help us all think about what are the needs that we still might run across that and what people need from us. So thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And here's another comment. Thank you all so much for sharing your expertise. And I thank you, Sarah Clapper, Brian Smith, and Dr. Suzanne Deggs-White for agreeing to do this presentation tonight. Thanks also to Aline Click, Director of E-Learning and Web Media, and her staff for making this happen. If you were not able to enjoy the entirety of this experience because you might have had some technical issues, we have recorded the STEM Café, and it will be available within a couple of days on the NIU STEAM site. We'll be back on April 29th with another virtual STEM Café, The Science Behind the Virus, with Professor Singh, and it will be at 6 o'clock. We're hoping that this time works. We adjusted it 1/2 hour early because the peak time for Wi-Fi is now at 7:30 instead of 9, so we hope this works for everybody. We value your feedback, and my email is jdymond@niu.edu. Please give us your feedback and comments and suggestions for future STEM Cafes, either virtual or live, because we're planning to be back there. Don't forget to support your restaurants, the Fatties, with a 10% discount, and also if you're near Sugar Grove, the Open Range Grill, they have been great partners. We have a couple of other comments here. Thank you all so much for sharing your expertise, and thanks for putting this together. To me, thank you for mentioning that, and yes, thank you all, very helpful. And thank you, the audience, for joining us, and we hope that you attend future STEM cafes and stay sheltered. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.